There was a time over 200 years ago, prior to public education, when the responsibility for secondary education belonged solely to community members, when classes were small and when lessons were taught with a personal touch, ensuring every child got the most out of their education.
There was no such thing as public education 200 years ago. So members of local communities took it upon themselves to take the responsibility of providing education, in this case secondary education, for the students in their community. And it took part as community leaders came together, as church leaders came together, business leaders came together and said, we're going to provide education for our local students, and that started right here in these communities.
Called town academies, they once stood 122 strong in their home state of Maine and were locally governed and funded through direct tuition payments from families and local philanthropy. But as taxpayer support for public schools grew at the end of the 19th century, many of these independent schools were absorbed by the emerging public school system. Many communities, however, chose not to build public high schools. In Maine, over 55 communities have continued the historic practice of using the private town academy as their high school of choice. Today, 9 of these private town academies remain and continue to operate in the communities they have historically served.
When public education came into existence at the end of the 19th century, the state decided to help parents, encourage parents to send their students to these town academies, and therefore they provided some tuition support for town academies, known as the maximal allowable tuition rate, which is the average cost of secondary education from the previous year. And so for every student who attends the academy, these communities pay the tuition bill, as it were, for these students to attend the academies.
Data from the National Center for Educational Statistics show that Maine's town academies cost 19% less per pupil in tax-supported revenue than Maine's public schools. Through local control, philanthropic support,